Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's CPH review session. Today's topic is leadership. It's presented by Dr. Anthony Disson. Dr. Disson is a professor in the School of Health and Health Sciences at Stockton University. As a public and population health educator and researcher, his scholarly work focuses on the intersections between queer and gender non-binary communities and the health systems, as well as exploring how nutrition and health information is shared, understood, and utilized by consumers of health information, particularly through online and social media channels. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to interact together in the chat. If you have questions for our presenter, please make sure to put those in the Q&A section. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Disson.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for being here today. I'm so excited to see so many people planning on taking the CPH exam. We were just chatting before, and I always have a special place in my heart when I took my exam. I took it 72 hours before lockdown occurred at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I always remember there was a question, on the exam that was something to the effect of, in a hypothetical situation, if a virus outbreak occurred somewhere in the southwest of the United States. I just remember reading that and kind of smirking to myself, like, I don't think this is very hypothetical right now. I think I'm living through it right now. So it is a ongoing reminder, if nothing else, about how pertinent and important and ever-present public health is. And so it's really exciting to see so many people here planning on taking the CPH exam, doing this preparation, continuing to professionalize our field. And that makes me very excited. And I love being able to be part of your review session. And hopefully this is an aspect of the exam that feels good, feels very manageable, feels very understandable about leadership. So what I want to do is just touch on some of the key aspects that you'll most likely see in the part of the leadership domain when you sit for your exam, just to make sure that those topics and those concepts are fresh in your mind, and that we are able to help bring some clarity to any areas that may not be part of your regular thought process, or maybe some of your regular work when it comes to public health. So as mentioned before, I am a professor of health sciences and public health at my university. I'm also a registered dietitian, so a lot of my research and work in public health tends to look at food and nutrition, access, these sorts of things. And it is a very interesting and exciting field to be in. And what continues to be an ongoing message for me with my students as well as my colleagues is I really feel that so many people more than ever are aware now of just how vital and important public health is. And yes, I do think the COVID-19 pandemic helped to really bring that to the forefront of a lot of people's minds. But I think there's a lot of influences and a lot of factors within our worlds right now and in our environment that is really letting both professionals and students and lay people like recognize just how crucial this field is. So I have three major objectives today. Of course, just to make sure that some of these public health leadership concepts we're able to understand how they form kind of the foundation of what we're going to be looking at for this aspect of the domains of the CPH exam. Secondly, and just as importantly, make sure that we're able to see how tasks done by public health professionals relates to this. Because of course, what's the point and the value of understanding these theoretical concepts or these ideas if there's no applied importance to it? So I want to make sure that we're able to see how, regardless of what all different aspects and work that each and every one of us is doing in public health that's on this call today, that we're able to see where leadership can connect in a meaningful way. And then most importantly, perhaps of all, get you one step closer to gaining even greater levels of confidence, knowing that you will be successful earning your CPH credential after you successfully take the exam.
Identify which domains look familiar to you and which do not. The sections that are...
Sure. So I don't know what that recording was. I apologize. So the leadership domain addresses the importance of leadership competence and dispositions in public health, because that really is the two key aspects to be aware of. That um, within this domain, there is the foundational knowledge, but there's also the attitudinal or the disposition aspects of it to see what leadership is and why it is of importance. And so, of course, these are going to be the key aspects that are going to address this. I won't read through these each one by one. You have them here. But what I want you to just notice a little bit are some of the Bloom's taxonomy, some of the action verbs here about how these connect in. It's about implementation, application, prioritization. And the reason why I think this matters is because when you think about what types of questions or what types of scenarios you may see for this aspect of the domain on the exam, that's really going to be a key aspect of it, is your ability to rank and prioritize, your ability to understand what needs to be implemented and in what order. When do you apply one managerial or leadership concept versus another? How do you properly utilize evidence data? What is the process by which we develop strategies? What is the process by which we motivate and encourage people? Having that in mind can be very helpful, because in doing so, you'll be able to see with any of the exam questions that come up, what are they looking for here? Foundational knowledge, attitudes, just basic theory understanding, that can be a really important tool. Lastly, and again, all of these will go through, our ability to see in public health how we contribute to the creation of key aspects of leadership and organizational management, in particular, community or organizational missions, goals, values, visions, how that's communicated out to shareholders, and then the use of things like continuous quality improvement, CQI, as an important foundational aspect of public health leadership practice. So, what I think leadership really means, and sometimes I think with some of the other domains, we might say, okay, I could see how communication comes in, data and analytics comes in, disease management comes in, but leadership is such a nebulous, abstract kind of concept at times. What exactly does this have to do? Why do I need a leadership mindset to be seen as a public health professional? And the way that I see it always is that leadership is sort of this box in which these public health services find themselves in. So policy development, assurance, our ability to go through all of these different steps. It is a leadership mindset that really helps us to do all of this successfully. And the reason why I love that this is the leadership domain, not the management domain, although certain managerial concepts are part of it, anybody can be a leader. My job, my task, my work in public health may not always be a director, a manager, it may not always be in that oversight capacity. So I think if that was the way that this was being phrased, it could be easier to say, well, I don't do this kind of work. I may not even be interested in doing that kind of managerial work. What is the point of this knowledge to me as a public health professional? But with leadership, since leadership is about social change and social action and motivation, any single one of us can be called upon to be a leader at any given moment. And so, with all of these different essential services, leadership is sort of the underpinning to it, because whether I'm talking about assessment and monitoring, whether I'm talking about equity, whether I'm talking about championing diversity, whether I'm talking about how getting our community stakeholders to be better involved, that leadership mindset leads to greater success. Because as I mentioned before, what is leadership? Leadership is change. Leadership is how we manage and inspire change. It's a strange word out there because I've wrestled with this all the time about, if you are a leader, does that mean you must have followers? And there's a lot of interesting theories out there about this notion, but that's why with leadership, I resonate more with the notion that leadership is about change management and motivation and inspiration versus I'm in charge and people follow me, kind of director subordinate kind of mindset. And so when we see leadership about change and the management and the acceptance of change and inspiring others to move through change, that again can open up the field of leadership to say, well, anybody can find themselves in positions where they can assist in this process. The other aspect about leadership that connects so well into public health is the view that health is a human right. and that this is the value structure and system that we are all operating in, that everybody has the right to health and equitable health. And so if we are to do our work in such a way that places this value at the core, it takes a leader to say, well, then anytime I do not see our work acting in such a way, moving in such a way, supporting this value structure that says health is a human right, something has to change. I need to be part of this change, whether that means I'm assisting somebody else or I'm leading that charge of saying something in our work needs to be pivoted, improved upon, done away with. That is where we take on that role of leadership. What is your leadership role within the field, regardless of your rank, your position within society, the type of organization you're in, your particular profession within public health? This is what can make leadership so grand. There's also different levels and ways in which we can see leadership present itself. And so the field itself, kind of at that macroscopic level, our field needs to be a leader because public health needs to be a leader in policy, in clinical health, in governmental and political affairs. It needs to be a leader in education. How do we, as the body that makes up public health, lead societal action and change towards better and better human rights and equitable health access? There's also the level to which, again, any of us can be a leader. It's not a title that can be given. And then lastly, our roles and responsibilities sometimes require us to be leaders. So some of us are in positions, management, administration, et cetera, where being both at our professional self and being a leader is a bit more necessary to get the work done. So whether we're looking at it at the largest sense, we're looking at it just in the most individual sense, or a part of just our day-to-day work, leadership is something that can always make our work and our profession do its job better. So one major area in which you will see leadership present itself within the CPH exam is through the ability to properly identify different leadership styles and theories. So I want to go over some of the key ones that you will most likely be asked to be able to recognize and to be able to better understand. One part of this is the recognition of the evolution of leadership. And leadership as a field, leadership as an area of scholarly inquest is sort of relatively-ish still in its infancy. Where it really sprung from was what was sometimes called the great man theory, which was this idea that people are just born leaders. And this has a very interesting root, of course, in things like colonialism. This has our roots in people being born into certain lineages of families, right? Like the people with this last name, they're just leaders, and the rest of us aren't because leaders are born, and it tends to have sort of that genetic ancestral privilege behind it. This only in the last 90 plus years has started to evolve into what was called the trait theory, which was starting to shift the notion that leaders are not necessarily born, but they do have to have specific qualities. So that is in of itself not necessarily a bad idea, because there certainly are qualities and attributes that make good leaders. But again, this still very much fell within the realm of, well, people with certain skin color, people certain, biologic sex assigned at birth, people with hair, people who did or did not have a beard, people that were of a certain height, almost sort of this eugenic kind of sociology kind of aspect of leadership was the trait theory, that people who could check these ticks off the boxes, they were the good leaders. This evolved over time into what is sometimes called the behavioral theory of leadership, which starts to see leadership as roles and tasks versus a person's intrinsic traits. And we still see a lot of remnants of this, especially on the more managerial side, where we might say, look, that person is the world's worst public speaker, but they know how to get their work done. And that became kind of synonymous with leadership. And this is where we see the separation of managerial tasks and qualities and attributes and traits of leadership. As this has continued to evolve, and where we sort of are at this moment in time is the popularization of what is called the transformational theories of leadership. And perhaps some of you are even aware of, or at least has heard of the term of transformational leader. So-and-so is a transformational leader, and the notion that that is the best. with transformational theories of leadership, really, though, what this is discussing is that leadership often is situational and environmental. That certain situations, certain environments that we find ourselves in, certain moments of time necessitate different or unique leadership styles. And that's what we're going to look at next. So as we evolve from great man to trait to behavioral to transformational, what it does is it starts to separate the notion that only a certain group of people can be leaders. And again, broadens this perspective that says not only can anybody be a leader, but a person who's a great leader in a certain situation may not always be the best person in another situation, so that leadership becomes not so much of a permanent title or identity for myself, but something far more fluid. So one theory or one aspect of leadership to be aware of is what is called McKinsey's 7S framework. And what roots all of this together is the notion that at the core of this, again, is this notion of a shared value system. So again, at the broadest aspect of public health, our shared value is that health is a human right. But of course, within different organizations, different areas of work and practice, there's going to be different values, whether we're in the educational system, research sphere, community outreach, political and policy development. What are those shared values? Surrounding this, or what connects into, are what are sometimes referred to as the three hard or fixed or permanent elements, and then these three softer or more flexible or more abstract elements. So the fixed elements are the structure, the systems, and the strategies. And the reason why these are seen as fixed, especially with structure, my building is my building, or my university is my university, or my town is my town, or my county is my county. And while these things can change over time, they typically change slowly. So part of this, of McKinsey's framework here, is to say to be a good leader is to know the structure. What are those fixed elements? I need to work with what is before me, not the a system I wish I had, not the technology I wish I had, not the town I wish I had, but what it is right in front of me. Systems. What are the systems that are at play? Political systems, economic systems, communication systems, etc. And then finally, what are those strategies? Not again that strategies can't change over time, but right now they're going to be key strategies that I need to understand and utilize in order to carry out effective work. Over time, this may change as environment changes, perhaps as systems change. But the thought is that from day to day, structure, systems, and strategy are pretty fixed. They're not going to be too flexible from day to day. Now, the softer elements, which are a little more abstract in nature, are our style, our approaches, the skills that we have or the skills that we need, and the staff, the people, of which there can sometimes be a tremendous amount of turnover. So our skills, the style, and the staff, the idea is that these are less permanent. And again, these can be changed perhaps a bit more effectively. Even with these different leadership styles that we're going to look at next, right? Those can be skills that we have that we employ in certain situations and not others. Another key one to be familiar with is what is called the Aston social change model of leadership. And the three overarching qualities of this are: to be a good leader, we must understand the values of the group, the values of the individuals that make up that group, and the community or the societal values in which that group is existing. So if we look at group values, right, aspects around how do we get people to collaborate, how do we get people to believe in or subscribe to or understand a common purpose or a common vision, and then how do we handle difficulty and controversy that often arises in groups. I'm sure we all fondly think of all the group work and teamwork and team-based projects we've all done in the past and present. Right, conflict and controversy and difficulties arrive when we are working with other people, especially when we're working interprofessionally. A good leader understands the values of the group so they can better handle and promote good collaboration, good unity, and deal with conflict and controversy when it occurs. I also need to understand individual values. So not just seeing the group as uniform, but who are the people within it? How conscious or unconscious are people of themselves, including myself? Am I even conscious of who I am? That sense of congruence and that sense of commitment. So how much do people feel that they are committed to, and how much do I know who is and is not committed to that shared purpose or vision? And then lastly, society and community values, which can be things like citizenship, things like senses of belonging, senses of pride within the community. Do I know how to work within that? And community isn't just towns. Community can be places of work. I just, as an aside, for my own place of work, I've seen many administrators come and go, and a common factor for the ones that don't tend to be very successful are the ones that never take the moments and the time needed to really understand the culture of this place, of this university, of this hospital system, right? What is it that makes it unique? What is it that people really believe in and fight for? That is something I really want to understand, because to be a citizen of this community or even a citizen of this university, that means something to different people often. And a good leader knows how to better understand it so that they can craft their work and craft their messaging around that. So, some key theories here. My recommendation as you go through this, your other study materials, especially for these theories, think about that in terms of your ability to identify. What are the key factors that show you an example of servant leader versus laissez-faire and some of the other ones that we will look at? That can be a really good technique. It's not about memorization of every little word of it. It's your ability to identify those key distinguishing factors. So servant leadership theory, which is a very popular theory of leadership right now, is the notion that leaders meet the needs of their followers. The idea is that I am not here to toot my own horn. I am not here to secure my next promotion. And it's not that I have to be completely mindless of my own career aspirations or needs, but my goal here is to serve the people who are, again, for lack of a better word, under me, or those people that follow me, or that people that report to me. My role as a leader is to move the whole group forward. So I'm here to focus on the growth of the people who report to me, and that power is shared as much as possible so that other people feel that sense of confidence and self-determination to advance themselves forward. Now, all of these kind of fall within this transformational leadership umbrella of situational environmental application, but within that is its own transformational leadership theory. And the idea here is that transformational leadership theory is all about motivating other people and creating that unified vision. And those two things really relate very strongly to one another, because the idea here with transformational leadership is that all people want to have an intrinsic motivation to kind of serve the needs of the organization or to serve the needs of the group, whatever it is. So my role as a transformational leader isn't to force people through will to do what needs to be done. It's to create an environment that is so inspirational that people have a desire. I want to work on the project. I want to get us to success. I want to get us across that finish line. Visionary leadership, key thing here, it is about the future. So visionary leadership theory is long-term focused. The idea here is, how do we achieve unity? How do we achieve success over the next 10 years, right? Not the next couple days, not even in the next couple months, but a long-term vision. So here, leaders are trying to create an environment that gets people to see something down the road that will not have immediate fruits to bear, that will not have immediate payoff. So a good visionary leader is somebody who can help people basically delay gratification. We may not see the applause, we may not see the reward here for some time. Some of us may not even still be part of the organization by the time that occurs. But visionary leadership is when there is a project, a task, a need that requires it. 20 healthy people 2030, right? Over the next decade, what are the goals that we're setting for ourselves? We're not going to see this today. How do we keep people focused on a vision of a 10-year timeline? Visionary leadership theory. Relational or relationship-oriented leadership is all about connection, as it hopefully makes sense to say. But the idea here is that collaboration and teamwork and participation is so crucial to success that we have to kind of do away with hierarchy. Nobody is above anybody else. We're all at the same level. Relationship-oriented leadership tends to focus on task because the idea here is there might be tasks that are menial. There might be tasks that are time consuming, that may not always be the most thrilling. How do we encourage people, motivate people to continue to work in environments or times where the work could be a bit repetitive or just isn't inherently exciting? Relationship-oriented leadership theory says our goal here is to create a sense of community, that we support each other so that when I'm feeling a bit burnt out, my colleague here helps me through, and when they're feeling a bit burnt out, I swoop in to help them through. We're all moving kind of together as one. That doesn't work when there's hierarchy, because that can lead to resentment. That can lead to, oh, well, I don't get paid enough to do this. So and so can take care of this. Relationship says, no, we're all in the same boat. We are all together. Transactional leadership theory is, again, kind of a routinely used one that isn't necessarily bad, but we start here to get into some of these leadership theories that do have a bit of a tendency to potentially lead to some problem, because the idea here is that people complete their work if there is an incentive or if there is a penalty for the work not being completed. So the idea here is, of course, commonly used in employment. I do my work, I get my salary. I stop showing up to work, you fire me. Transactional, right? And that is not inherently wrong. But because of the nature of transactional leadership, this structure of task equals reward, insubordination equals penalty has to be maintained. So this leads to bureaucracy. This tends to lead to micromanagement. This leads to perhaps a glut of policy and procedures. So it doesn't tend to create strong bonds, and it rarely creates a strong sense of community or connection to the organization, because it's just more of, look, I show up, I do my work, I get my pay, I go home. And there might be times that's exactly what's needed. We're not always going to be working on the most inspirational, artistic, beautiful work ever. There's going to be times where we just need to get the work done. But this does tend to be the leadership style that a lot of managers and directors use, which may not always be wise in the long term, or as a never changing style of leadership, because of course this leads to disengagement, disenfranchisement, and this can lead to feelings of resentment if I feel somebody else is getting a greater reward and I'm doing the same level of work as they are. Authoritative or autocratic leadership is about control. I'm not here to get your opinion. I'm not hosting a town hall. This is what we're doing. This can have a very important application in emergencies or extreme deadlines of time. So if I am working in a system and we have a big natural disaster, right? I live in New Jersey, right? We get hurricanes, especially closer to the ocean. And we know, and I work for the county health system, and a hurricane's coming. We don't have time to sort of take a vote. Who thinks we should work on this? Who thinks we should work on that? Decisions need to be made. What budgets are getting temporarily suspended because we have to put money into something else? Where do we need to reallocate resources? What's essential? What's non-essential? There's no time to have a lot of debate. We've got 72 hours to get this into effect. So in emergencies, extreme time deadlines, we got to get this grant application in today. Somebody who can step in and take that kind of authoritative role can be actually quite a lifesaver. Of course, when this is used in non-emergency situations where there isn't a crunch for time, this leads to burnout, turnover, absenteeism, a sense of, look, I have no role to play in this. So-and-so over there took all the control. They're the one in charge. Go talk to them. On the exact flip side of this, we have laissez-faire leadership. People are basically allowed to make whatever decisions they want with very little input or direction from the manager, director, leader, letting others decide. The idea here is that this can be an extremely effective style of leadership in certain situations. If there is regular communication between the leader and the team members, where team members are allowed to do their work with some supervision, They are a highly skilled, highly experienced team. They know what they're doing. They're self-starters. They don't need me coming in, fiddling around with things just to do so. But there does need to be that regular communication and check-in, but otherwise they are left to their own devices. So if I am coming into an organization and I'm here to lead a team that's been working together for the last 10 years, I don't need to come in and kind of kick things around just to prove my worth. If I'm doing my job appropriately, actually temporarily at least employing a laissez-faire style of, okay, I'm going to check in regularly, but keep doing what you're doing. This can allow people to keep doing the work they're already passionate about, they're already interested in. They don't need a lot of direction at this time. Of course, the downside or the potential risk to laissez-faire leadership is in a team that is not skilled, experienced, that doesn't have a good self-management, or when a team of any quality needs direction, if they feel their leader, their director, manager is checked out, not really cares about what they do, things will disintegrate and fall apart quickly. Participative or democratic leadership. Everybody is involved in the decision-making process. This can lead to really good personal skills, job satisfaction. People feel that they have a real vote and a voice at their work. This is going to be very important when we need to build teamwork and a sense of camaraderie, where the quality of the work is more important than the timeliness of the work. Because just like we see in our own political system, democracy is not always the most efficient, right? It's not always the most timely approach to governance. And so true with it as a leadership style. So when there's not necessarily a time crunch, when we don't have a strict deadline, participative or democratic leadership can really help people buy in, feel motivated, and feel a great sense of ownership of the work they do. And again, especially for long-term projects or projects that are very unique and the quality really needs to be quite high, this is going to be the best thing. Charismatic leader, right? So many people fall for a charismatic leader. Charismatic leadership is about generating inspiration and enthusiasm. It does not tend to be as focused on team-based work. So there isn't maybe always going to be that sense of commitment. We're all in this together, but it is inspirational. And so a good charismatic leader can create tremendous senses of loyalty and devotion. I had a dean once who unfortunately went to another university. I would have done anything she said. I would have followed her anywhere. I trusted her so much, and I felt so connected to her vision and to what she did. I would have anything she wanted, I would have done. I have had deans I would not do that for, right? Absolutely. Because among other reasons, they may not have that charisma that this prior dean of mine had. As can be the case, and I can even think of this in my own experience in my own profession, if a charismatic leader leaves and they are not necessarily replaced by another equally charismatic leader, this can create quite a void where people suddenly, say, well, they're not as good as so and so was, or they're not as interesting as the former person was, and that can lead to a harder road ahead for the new leader, whoever they are, to build that sense of loyalty and devotion if they can't quite catch the heartstrings of people as their predecessor once did. So those are going to be some key leadership theories. And again, the most valuable aspect of it is if I'm looking at a scenario, can I identify this as that's an example of autocratic versus democratic versus laissez-faire versus transformational. I just want to know those key identifiers. Some other key concepts in leadership, and this will see again a pretty hefty bulk of the kinds of questions you might see, are more of the applied aspects of leadership. So assessment, right? Assessment is such a key aspect of public health. This concept falls into multiple domains of public health and even of the CPH exam. For our purposes of it, a leader is here to champion assessment, because leaders to lead and for organizations to do their work well, we need to be able to quickly and kind of efficiently identify changing needs and changing trends in a community, in an organization, wherever we may be working. We need to consider all the different changes necessary to our approaches, our processes, right? Leaders are here to say, we're not going to just do things the way we've always done them because that's the way we've always done them. If change has occurred, we have to adapt to that change. We can't force that change to fit into the box we would like it to. That never works. And a leader is always trying to anticipate risk and forecast risk as much as possible ahead of time. Other key things, and these will, please, big asterisk here: mission, vision, values, and goals. These are key concepts within leadership and kind of organizational theory that are very important for this domain of the exam. And the key thing here, again, is just to know one versus the other. What makes something the mission versus the vision? The mission of an organization is why do they exist and how will they serve the stakeholders that they serve? What is commonly confused with the mission is the vision, because they are related, but they are distinctly different. Vision is aspirational. And if I may use probably a not so diplomatic way of describing it, vision is sort of a daydream, right? And it's not, doesn't mean it's not important. Vision is to say, in a perfect world, this is what we would get done. Our mission says, in the world we live in, here's what we think we can get done as part of that vision. So my vision could be to end hunger. We might say that is a beautiful, important vision, probably not realistically, unfortunately, going to happen right now. So how can I work towards this vision with my organization? Well, our mission is to reduce hunger, at least in this community, in this county, in this town, in this university, at this school, right? This is the part of it we can do within this larger aspirational vision we've set for ourselves. Our values are what we foundationally believe. And the idea here is that our mission and our vision should match our values. Because if they don't, either our mission and our vision are out of sync with our values, or our values are changing and we need to update our value system or reflect upon our value system, because maybe what was true 85 years ago is not true today. Our goals and our objectives, this is what we can measure. So are we being successful? Are we meeting our mission? How do we know whether we're meeting our mission? By whether or not we've met the goals or objectives we set for ourselves. So at the most abstract, the most aspirational, we have our vision. At a more manageable, actually, perhaps maybe we could do this sense, we have our mission. How do we know whether we're successful in meeting our mission, our goals and objectives that we've set for ourselves, which need to be measurable? And then lastly, tying all of these together, our values, which again, if our goals, our objectives, mission, or vision are out of sync with our values, we have to ask why and what needs to change. Ideally, all of these are being developed with our key stakeholders, right? It's not just me by myself making this up, but everybody who is a stakeholder in this organization or in the work that we're doing has a voice, and that we use our mission, vision, values, and goals to communicate with our stakeholders, to let them know what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing, are we meeting our goals or not? These are talking points. These are things that help to guide our communication methods with our stakeholders. Mission, again, it is our purpose and hopefully is motivational and inspirational. We will do this action for this community by this date, right? Our mission is to reduce hunger in children of Camden County, New Jersey by 2030, right? Like, this is our mission. This is what we're working towards. Our vision is a little more aspirational: health and happiness to every member of Camden County, New Jersey. That's beautiful. And it's not to say that that's never going to happen, but that's quite a tall order. And the idea is that I probably in the next 6 years am not going to help every single community member of this county, of this city, be happy and healthy 100% of the time. But this is my vision, working towards health and happiness to all of our community members, because why not? Why? Health is a human right. This is my vision. Our mission to try to work towards that vision is a bit more rooted in possibility, shall we say. Another key aspect, and this connects very much into our mission and our goals, allocation of resources. Because how do we do the greatest amount of good in a resource restricted environment? Anybody on our webinar today work in an environment with just endless resources? If so, can you please give us all some tips on how to make that happen in our own organizations? But we all have goals and we all have our missions and we all have our visions and we all want to do such great work. There's only so much money in the budget to hire people. There's only so much money in the budget to pay for programs and resources for programs. We can only send so many people to conferences. We can only buy so much new technology. We only have so many hours in a day. So how do we do the greatest amount of good knowing that our resources are limited? Well, part of the allocation and justification of budget and resource is critical analysis. And I tell this to my students all the time, especially when we're talking about things related to ethical concerns or ethical needs or any kind of hard decision. People may not like the decision you come to. They may outright disagree with it. But you need to, at the end of the day, at least be able to say, well, this is how I got to my conclusion. This is how I came to my decision. And critical analysis is such an important part of that, that we make decisions through a deliberative process. It's not just, well, I like this, so that's what we did. No, this is the step-by-step sequential process we went through that is transparent, ideally that has involved stakeholders every step of the way, and that we're able to show that our conclusion was reached through clear reasoning and relevant reasoning. So critical analysis, again, people may not still love the budget at the end of the day, or I may still not be happy that you funded their program and not mine. But if I can at least understand exactly why that decision was made, I'm probably more likely to accept it. I still may not love it, but I will accept it. Other key things to be aware of, especially when we're trying to implement different initiatives, anytime we're trying to say, well, look, this is the focus. These are the goals, the objectives. This is our mission. This is what we're implementing. Key components and key steps to be aware of. So innovation. We want to be supportive of innovation for evidence-based developments. I remember once at a healthcare center that I worked for, there was an occupational therapist who wanted to bring in this virtual reality system to help go out to the community for people that were recovering from strokes, traumatic brain injuries, et cetera, to help with their recovery, to help with their therapy. Very innovative. The question, though, that came up was, is this going to be worth the money? You are passionate about it, certainly. It's a great new idea, but it's expensive. So why would I fund your VR system versus all the other requests that are coming through? So innovation is at its core, can't quite be enough. The other thing is I want to prove that my work is high impact, that the intervention that I'm looking for has evidence behind it, and that is what we call a high impact practice. This VR system might be great. It might even have good evidence behind it, but is it better than other factors or other therapies that are already available, perhaps even cheaper? So I want to show that not only am I creative, but that it is a high impact practice. This is going to do a lot of good and a lot of outcome for the work being done. I also need to make sure that we are monitoring, evaluating, and improving the program as we go along so that we're doing performance management. That it's not just, okay, go out, do your thing, have fun, that there's, again, that regular check-in, regular communication, making sure that we are evaluating this program each step of the way. For a lot of the work, especially in community work, public and population health, this is going to involve cross-sector partnerships. And those are partnerships that exist between private and public entities. So local government and the private businesses, because we want to do work to improve hunger and homelessness. So that might involve talking with restaurants. That might involve talking with local grocery stores. Well, they're private organizations. They're not beholden to our whims. So to build those cross-sector partnerships to say, how does the private and the public come together is going to be a key factor. Real-time communication, that we're not saying to the community, oh, we'll get back to you about this eventually, or we'll let you know how everything goes when it's done. Everything from start to middle to finish, engagement with stakeholders, engagement with community members, and then finally, political willpower and political commitment, because resources and action and talking points shared through the media typically require political commitment from local, state, or federal representatives. And again, we need to be able to speak that language. If I'm going to go to make the point why we need to have a whole system change occur, well, that's going to have some pretty big political and legislative implications, most likely. Can I speak politic, right? Am I able to have those conversations and those discussions with people to create, again, those kinds of relationships that are needed? All of this is going to be achieved by multiple people. I'm not going to be the sole person doing this. But again, a leader, as they look through that leadership mindset, says, how do I keep everybody involved from start to finish and every roadblock and road bump that comes along the way motivated and continuously committed to our shared vision? Data and data systems, informatics, leaders, how do I want to say, sometimes are not the first to think of these, because if you are yourself not an information scientist or a biostatistician, an epidemiologist, sometimes the informatics aspects of it might not feel important, or it may feel like, well, that's for other people to work with, etc. But the idea from a leadership perspective is that everything we do, ideally, is informed by data. So I may not be the informaticist, I may not be the biostatistician, but am I pulling in their points of view, their perspective, their data, giving them a chance to share whatever data has been collected? Am I using a data visualization scientist to make some beautiful charts and graphs and visual representatives of this data? Because the idea here with data systems is that if we are going to go out there into the community or wherever it is that we may be working, we want to make sure that we can communicate all this information in ways that are, again, evidence-based, that we're not just making this up, here is the data, but that it's also something that's understandable. In our world as it exists right now, and this is by no means a new concern, though, people are very concerned about data privacy, data security, right? We're all walking around with little computers in our pockets. We're being asked regularly by our health organizations, by our governmental organizations, to share private information about ourselves, to share our data under the idea that this will improve population health outcomes. So can a leader properly share this information with the community? What do they think? Do they have access to the data? Who owns this data? How do they communicate with this? Is it something that they can see a direct benefit from, or is it just for me to get another research publication? So that leadership mindset here when it comes to designing, implementing, utilizing data systems is to recognize that data is a very precious resource, and that any of us that work in healthcare, whether on the clinical side, the population health side, public health side, we have access to very privileged information when it comes to data. And what I think about not just the COVID-19 pandemic, but all sorts of other historic examples where people feel that they are being forced to do something, even in the name of public health, that without their consent, without their input, or that when they do raise concerns, they're sort of just scoffed off to the side. This is what can contribute to that sense of distrust between the communities that we serve and the health systems that are supposed to be serving them, in this sense of rejection. I don't trust you. And I want us as a field to really recognize more that we must engage with the community, and not say, just see it the way I see it, trust us this time, we've got it, but to really let people share their concerns and to appropriately address those concerns. Because again, from a leadership perspective, we need buy-in. We need trust. We need motivation. We need our communities to say, we like this project or this initiative. This is a very important aspect of it. Within teams themselves, teams are hard because teams are often very loosely governed. If a team is put together and is crafted together to work on a particular project, who's in charge? Is anybody in charge? If somebody is put in charge, will that ruffle feathers and create resentments among other team members? Team dynamics are tricky. I mean, they just are. So A leader, whether they are the leader within that team or whether you're the leader putting that team together, important concepts to remember is that first and foremost, people need to know their roles and the roles of others. If anybody here is familiar with what are called the four core competencies of interprofessional collaborative practice, this is something that actually the field of nursing has really been championing, but it's been moving out into all different areas of healthcare and healthcare work. Teams and teamwork and roles and responsibilities are two of these key core competencies. I need people to know what I do because if people don't know what my role is in the team, they may not get why I'm doing what I'm doing. They may think I'm wasting time. They may not know why I'm not working on something else. And I need to know what everybody else is doing so I know who to go to when I have questions. And I also know all the different components of this larger vision we're working on. So to have a sense of both connection and interdependence and independence, we need to know what everybody's role is. So taking that time to say, here is the role and responsibility of each member of this team. Collectively as a team, we are setting the direction. We're setting that aspirational vision for ourselves. How are we regularly assessing ourselves and getting and giving feedback? What's going well? What could be going better? What motivates? And maybe for us, it's transactional, which is fine. But everybody in this team, if they know they're going to get their reward, that incentive, they're going to do great work. But for others, that may not be wise, or that may not always be the most motivating factor. And maybe they want to know that they're going to be able to share their work, that it's okay to make mistakes, that this is a non-punitive environment, that all wins, big and small, are able to be celebrated. An example I always think of with this was a tech company gave a team a project, and then they worked on this thing for, I think, like 2 years, only at the end of it to be told, actually, needs have changed, the direction has changed, we're not going to need your deliverable after all. And the team was very demoralized about that, and it caused a lot of trouble within this organization. And what it came to be, the team understood things changed and the project they were working on was no longer necessary. What made them upset and what really demoralized them was they still wanted to just let people know, their other colleagues within their industry know what they had been working on, even if it was no longer necessary. So for them, their motivational factor was for people to see all the hard work they had been doing, even if their deliverable was no longer needed. And if they had been given the opportunity to present, at a meeting or at some kind of assembly or something to say, unfortunately, the needs of the organization or the field have changed, but we want to give them a half an hour to let you all know about the incredible work they've been doing. That would have kept their motivation and their loyalty and their dedication strong. So it's important to recognize that, yes, people are motivated by their incentives and their rewards, but there's other factors that are motivational as well. And again, we don't want to leave a leadership vacuum. So succession planning, passing the torch, how do we plan for, I'm eventually going to move out of here, or somebody else is going to eventually move out, and how do we have a good plan for succession? Other key concepts within leadership management is performance improvement. And this, again, a tricky thing because sometimes we are uncomfortable with doing this. One thing I hear from my students all the time when they're working with teams, and inevitably somebody in the team isn't doing their work, but this has been going on for weeks before they tell me, why didn't you tell me sooner? I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to be that guy. Right? We need to have those uncomfortable conversations. It's not about getting people in trouble, but it's about improving performance. So how do I improve my own performance? Communicating with my manager, my director, collectively identifying areas of growth, setting measurable goals, good reminders, check-ins, etc. And if I'm trying to work on the improvement of others, talking to people, I guess that's simple things, but learning about them. What are their interests? What are their goals? What are their strengths, weaknesses? Co-writing those measurable goals, again, calendar check-ins, providing feedback. It's such simple things. And they're easy to forget when we work in fast-paced, busy environments. But this really is it. Even just offering people bonuses or raises or other kinds of incentives, those only work to a degree. Very often it is those humanistic aspects that people really want to feel seen and feel done, in addition, of course, to financial compensation. but there's more than just pay me more. It might be career advancement or help me with professional development. Would you consider sending me to a conference or to a training or something to that effect? The other thing to recognize is that we want to make sure that when we are leading change, that we are doing so in a way that recognizes capacity. And this is capacity at the individual level, the organizational level, and the community level. And usually what this requires is collaboration, the development of knowledge and skill, the improvement on support systems, infrastructure systems, et cetera, and the development of collaborative partnerships and goals, especially with the community. What leadership in public health, and especially the ways that you will be assessed within the exam, what it's really looking for here and trying to emphasize is that public health, what makes it such a complicated and also incredible field is that it is interprofessional, right? We're not all trained the same way. We're not all in the same area of practice. We're not even all in health necessarily, but it's all the different threads, all the different components that come in together that influence health. How do we build capacity? How do we allow for that sphere that we're working within to keep expanding so that we're able to continue to do more and more and more and do more, hopefully good? How do I build my own capacity, my skills, my knowledge, my understanding? How does our organization improve capacity, support better infrastructure, better resources, technology? And we build community capacity by bringing the community in. Too often, it's unidirectional, where we're just sort of going out, doing what we think the community needs, telling the community what they need, or we go out, get our data for our own purposes, but it doesn't help the community necessarily. So things like community-based participatory research is a high impact practice that not only leads to better research outcomes, but it builds those levels of commitment, partnership, and connection with the community. Procedures are not set in stone, as much as very often our higher ups seem to think they are. Procedures, governance, rules, et cetera, need to be reviewed and revised regularly. Continually seeing how can our language be more inclusive? How can our language be more expansive? How do we find ways to creatively support employees? Again, this can be, of course, financial, but other ways as well. Not everybody just wants more money. Work from home, flexible schedules, adaptable schedules. I'd rather work an extra hour at the beginning and the end of the day and work a 4-day work week versus a 5-day work week, or different summer hours, or all sorts of different things. Again, as I mentioned before, professional development opportunities. So how are we continuously checking in, communicating, getting that stakeholder feedback to see what kind of organizational policies and procedures need to be updated? What is hindering and what is supporting? What can be changed? What needs to be adapted around? And making sure, of course, that certain things that aren't flexible, like accreditation requirements, statutory requirements, regulatory requirements, are met. Because we don't want to fall into what is sometimes called normalized deviance. And my favorite example that I usually share with normalized deviance, I'll just share my own example because, again, maybe not every community around the country is the same way. In New Jersey, stoplights are sometimes a suggestion versus a hard and fast rule. Speed limits sometimes are more of a suggestion than a hard and fast rule. I'm not originally from New Jersey. I've lived in many different states, and I will say it was very interesting to move from the Midwest to New Jersey, where people come to a full stop at a yellow light, where here that light turns red and maybe another 2 or 3 or 4 cars keep going. And it's just seen as normal because that's normalized deviance. Well, nobody else really takes it as seriously, so why should I? And I think about this at a time before I worked more in public health when I was in the clinical side of healthcare. Well, if nobody else is really doing their hand sanitizing before and after they leave the patient room, I'm probably less likely to keep up with it because nobody else is doing it. And nobody's checking me and saying, hey, remember, sanitize your hands before and after you enter the room. So with normalized deviance, and this is something where, yes, management, but good leaders really check in, is to make sure everybody is following the procedures. if something just isn't working, the procedure needs to be changed versus, well, we'll just ignore it. But so often we just ignore it. Because with normalized deviance, especially with regulatory, record keeping, statutory requirements, this is where we can get into some extremely bad situations if we are violating federal guidelines, if we are violating funder or grantee recipient guidelines, accreditation guidelines. So we want to make sure that people are being trained and are on board in such a way to say the policies and the procedures as they exist must be followed. And if they're wrong, we'll fix them versus just letting them stay wrong and everybody just ignores them. Another big aspect of organizational planning, management, leadership is the strategic plan. The idea here is, what are we going to do for some specified period of time, the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 100 years? The strategic plan contains all those components we mentioned before. It should have spelled out our mission, our vision, our goals and objectives, and the strategies to meet those goals and objectives spelled out. We need this because this is what tells us how to prioritize budget needs, staff needs, allocation of resources, timelines for projects and tasks. If the strategic plan, and again, mission, vision, and goals aren't in alignment, something went terribly wrong, and time needs to be spent to get them in agreement. Because if you give me a task, because that's part of our strategic plan, but it does not meet the mission and vision of the organization, people are eventually, even myself, are going to say, why are we doing this? This doesn't make any sense. This isn't what we're here to do. So we want to make sure, in again, as collaborative a way as possible, these materials are all being crafted together in such a way that they all coherently make sense and connect with each other. Part of goals and objectives in particular, when it falls within the strategic planning, is doing SMART goals and SWOT analysis. So I'm going to assume many people, if not almost all, have been involved in these in some way. So hopefully these are relatively familiar, but for those that have not, or it's been a while, SWOT analysis is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Strengths and weaknesses are how we relate to our internal environment. Opportunities and threats are our relation to the external environment. So if I'm doing a SWOT analysis of my program, of the faculty within our program and our curriculum and all these different things, the strengths are inside us. What makes us strong? What are our areas of deficiency? And what can we fix internally? And then our opportunities and threats are what's happening in the external environment that are opportunities to capitalize on or threats to our continuity. SMART goals, or as they have also now being adapted to what are sometimes called SMARTY goals, are specific, measurable, action-oriented, relevant, and time-bound. The idea here with a SMART goal is that we are not just setting kind of an abstract, lofty, maybe we'll get it, maybe we won't goal. We are going to reduce childhood hunger by 25% by 2023, right? That was the goal we set for ourselves 10 years ago when we set this strategic plan saying one of our goals is to reduce childhood hunger by 25% in this community over the next decade. That was our SMART goal. We set them in this way because we either met it or we didn't. And if all we said was we're going to reduce childhood hunger, by when, by how much, 100%, 2%, a SMART goal, a well-made SMART goal gives us that direction. And then to improve upon it with the nomenclature of creating what we call a SMARTY goal, all the same things, but that our goals are also inclusive and equitable, that we're taking into account all those other factors, excuse me, to ensure the work we're doing is equitable, that it is inclusive, that we are making sure all members of the community are not just brought in and considered, but are given a voice to share their needs. That all this creates very strong strategic planning. We need people to implement, and we need people in groups to evaluate. Often we want to consider an external evaluator because we want somebody who does not have a conflict of interest or any potential biases, who is able to come in and make sure that they are checking all aspects of this. A couple theories and a couple frameworks you're going to want to know. So make sure to take notes, put some asterisks here, important ones to know. So, Community Coalition Action Theory, CCAT. Key thing here is that these are coalitions. We build coalitions to analyze problems, conduct a needs assessment, create a plan of action, implement these strategies, and monitor outcomes. So the key thing here is that it's that coalition. We're bringing a coalition of people together to do this needs assessment and carry out this action. Collective impact framework, common agenda with shared measurements and mutually reinforcing activities and communication methods with a strong supportive backbone. Key thing here, common agenda, shared measurement, mutually reinforcing activities. So with the CIF, it's all about that like symbiotic benefits and effect. The patch model, planned approach to community health. This is where we get the community involved. We mobilize the community. We get everybody in the community involved. Data collection, they're involved. Selecting the key health priorities, they are involved. The development of that plan and the evaluation of the outcomes. Patch model brings in all members of the community. The old ABCDs, asset-based community development. The idea here is this is the kind of planning that says, what are the strengths and resources in the community? So with ABCD, it's not about changing or fixing the community. It's saying, here is how we've identified all the incredible resources, strengths, and assets that exist within this community. And think of the multiple times in which that's the message we want to send out. Even with our best of intentions, we can sometimes maybe unintentionally give the message to a community, well, you're sick and you're broken and we're here to fix you. And that's not always the message we want to give. So sometimes we need this planning where we're saying we're going to identify all the resources and the strength that exists within your community versus always focusing on what needs to be changed. And then lastly, the map, mobilizing for action through planning and partnership. Again, community driven here. Excuse me. So here it's a community driven strategic planning process. So here with MAP, the community is part of the strategic planning, part of that identifying those goals, strategies, and plans. A lot of similarities. Obviously, you could really put these all kind of in the same family, if you will. But again, understanding key, when am I seeing an example of CCAT versus patch? Patch is going to be all about community mobilization. CCAT is going to be more about building specific coalitions and doing more needs assessments. It's nuanced. It can be a little bit nitpicky, but the more you can kind of identify this is an example of this versus one of these other ones by knowing some of these key identifying factors, that will help tremendously. CQI, continuous quality improvement. So this comes right out of business that many other organizations and fields are utilizing, including public health. Continuous quality improvement is a deliberative improvement process. And the key aspect that makes CQI a little bit different than some other models is that it is ongoing. This process of plan, do, check, act, or sometimes it's also known as plan, do, study, act, is ongoing. It's not we get to from one end to the other, we wash our hands and we're done. CQI is continuous. We are always saying, how do we do better? How do we do better? So planning. This is where we're still in the process of trying to understand the problem or need. We're still collecting data. We are training people. We're proposing potential solutions. We aren't changing a thing. We're not doing a thing in the community. We are still in that planning stage. Once that is completed, we do. Now it's the implementation of the solution, the intervention, the program. We're collecting data. Check or study. All right, let's analyze it. How did we do? If we did pre and post, what were the outcomes? Did we meet the SMART goals, the SMARTY goals that we set for ourselves? And then based on that, we act. We act on what we learned. We learned that this program is immensely successful, and we're going to do it for another 5 years or 5 months or whatever it is the program might be. Or the data shows that we improved in this area, but not that. So we're going to go back to the planning stage, make some tweaks and some improvements and some changes, implement it again, collect data, analyze that data, see how we did, and continue to either make changes or adjustments to our evaluation methods or whatever it is that it needs to be. And it is ongoing. We didn't do a program to help kids feel more motivated to wear their bicycle helmet so that they are less likely to get brain injury if they get into an accident. It was successful, and we say, well, we solved childhood bicycle accidents, we're done. We keep going back and we keep going back and we keep going back. How do we make it better? We wanted at least half the kids in the community to wear the bicycle helmets they are. How do we get it to 70%? How do we get it to 80%? How do we get it to 100%? Continuous quality improvement, that we are regularly collecting data and making changes as needed. Accountability, of course, is a key thing in public health leadership or any area of leadership. And the idea here is that individuals at their own core level, as well as the individuals that make up those organizations, the organizations that make up all the organizations and environment, the community within that environment, are responsible for our own actions, and we may have to explain ourselves to other people. This goes back to that critical analysis. If I do something, my organization does something, my team does something, my health agency does something that people want to know why, hold us accountable for something, we have to ideally be able to say, this is why we did what we did. This is how we came to these decisions and conclusions and outcomes. We have to be able to be transparent. And again, a good leader is always checking to say, are we being transparent? Are we communicating in real time? And if people are asking us to explain our actions, we better be able to explain them fully. We're not hiding things, and we hopefully aren't sitting there saying, I actually don't know why we did what we did. We just did it. So that's why that critical from start to finish process, deliberative process, is so necessary. Because even again, if people are mad about or confused about an outcome, if they feel that we are holding ourselves accountable, even at the most individual level, this is why I made the decision I made. There may be consequences, there may not be. It depends on what the situation is. But interestingly enough, in a lot of research that's been done, people are less likely to have more severe punitive action taken against them if they are fully transparent and are able to document the course of their decision making, because people feel that they are not lying. Versus people or organizations that, of course, are found to be hiding things, that don't have a deliberative process to share, are more likely to suffer more severe penalties. So this is what we as leaders do. We are here to transform our teams, our organizations. These are some steps in which we can take to try to facilitate this process. But I share this here more just to say and to reiterate this notion: leadership is about change. At the end of the day, it is always about change and trying to facilitate change that moves us as a field or us as a group forward to meet that task of improving the inherent right of people to be healthy. Last couple things I just want to share really quickly on first, conflict management. Just as we have different leadership styles, we have different conflict resolution and management styles. Neither of these are right or wrong. I would argue, again, it's situational. Sometimes we do want to avoid it. Just ignore the situation. Not everything has to be an argument. Not everything has to be a fight. Not everything has to be a battle to be won. So an avoidant conflict resolution style might be the best thing to do when victory is impossible, or when the price of the controversy is too high. Sometimes it's better to say, I don't have to stir the pot right now. I can just ignore it. That is not always going to be the wisest choice, because conflict isn't necessarily meaning anything is bad. Conflict means the needs of people or the needs of different groups are at odds with each other. That's always going to happen in an interprofessional environment. So we can't always just pretend it's not there or ignore it. Sometimes we want to use what is called accommodative, where I'm going to give in. Someone wins and someone loses. So accommodation means, you know what? They win. Give them the resources, or you know what? That's fine. I'm giving it. And that's where the key difference between accommodative and competitive is. In both situations, someone's a winner and someone's not. But accommodative is, I have made the choice to say, I relent. I'm out. I bow out. I give in. This can actually be quite wise, because this can build social capital. This can build someone to say, you know what? Anthony was really gracious right there with that. So the next time I have a need, they may be more likely to say, give it to him, because he handled that situation before really well. With competitive, they're going to duke it out and fight it out. And this doesn't necessarily have to mean in a violent sense. It could be, all right, submit your proposals. And I've got 10 different teams submitting their proposals. I only am going to pick, let's say, 3. Whoever gave me the best 3 are able to make their argument. Someone's going to win, the rest aren't. So a little more competitive. It doesn't have to mean aggressive. It doesn't have to mean violent or combative. But it does mean everyone is jockeying for that win, but not everybody is going to get it. Compromise. This is going to be a huge aspect of negotiation. Where I work is a very strongly unionized environment. So anytime we have a new memorandum of agreement coming up, compromise, right? Neither party is going to be 100% happy, right? Management doesn't get everything they want. My union doesn't get everything they want. But the idea, of course, is that we compromise. I give a little, they give a little, so that I get a little bit and they get a little bit. Collaborative, as much as possible, is always going to be the way to go, because collaborative is where everybody's involved to solve a problem or solve a conflict. Everybody has a part to play. And the idea with a collaborative style is that everybody wins. That what winning means might change from person to person, but everybody wins. So basic kind of things, nothing, I can't imagine anything here is too groundbreaking for you all, but good reminders. Because again, when we're in the heat of the moment, the heat of the conflict, when we're stressed, it's easy to sometimes forget these things. So we just want to be respectful, set aside old grudges or biases or historic rivalries. No crosstalk, no interrupting. Everybody's listening respectfully, actively. Ensuring a common understanding of the problem is an important one. This can sometimes be at the core of most conflicts. Not everybody may see or understand the issue in the same way. And even just by creating that mutual understanding, that might solve all or at least most of the conflict at hand. Everybody, again, collaborative is proposing a solution, weighing out the pros and cons, and collaboratively agrees upon a solution. As much as possible, when we can lead people in this direction, it's going to lead to some pretty fantastic things. Last concept I want to share, especially as leaders, is negotiation. We've got to reach an agreement on issues of mutual concern. We're going to diagnose the issue, formulate an agreement, and negotiate. But again, negotiation, no party is 100% happy. Because if one party is completely happy and the other party isn't, well, then that was a competition of winners and losers. And a key thing with negotiation is we don't want to see it where we won and they lost, or vice versa, because again, that can lead to grudges, that can lead to rivalries, that can lead to resentment. That doesn't lead to good collaborative work over time. So with negotiation is, here's everything we want, here's everything they want. We've all given up and maybe been bruised a bit by it, but you know what? We can all at least say we feel this decision, this conclusion we've come to is fair or understandable. Even if it's not everything I wanted it to be, it at least got us in a good direction. So practice questions. And I'm sure your other review session presenters have shared this already, but the more practice questions and practice exams you can go through, I guarantee you, this will help tremendously. I must have done hundreds of practice questions leading up to my own exam preparation. I have to say, I felt so incredibly prepared. And when I took my own CPH exam, I felt so at ease as I was going through that the question bank, because I knew exactly what the format was going to be, how the questions would be phrased. And the other thing is, practice questions really let you know what you're pretty much doing great on, and you don't need to keep going back to that study material, and what areas to focus your time on a bit more effectively. So that being said, let's look at a couple practice questions. So question 1, let's say you have a group, and this group is using a problem solving to reconcile some underlying differences and create a nice win-win situation for the mutual benefit of all parties involved. This approach exemplifies which of these following styles of conflict management. Is that accommodating, avoiding, collaborating, or compromising? So take a moment, answer the poll to the best of your ability. And if you get it right, fantastic. And if you don't, that's okay too. That's the beauty of practice questions. So the idea here is just to take some time to see, if you were taking the exam right now, which do you think here would be the best answer? Let's see. All right. So most people, just about 60% said collaborating. About a third said compromising, and a few people said accommodating. So the reason why this would be collaborating is because it's win-win. Everybody has a say in the process. Nobody felt like they had to give something up. So compromise would be some people got some people had to give up, vice versa. Accommodating would be, you know what, you win. So for that one, there would be that very clear, for lack of a better word, winner loser, where they get everything, I get nothing. I accommodated to the need. So for this one, collaborating. So again, if you answered collaborating, fantastic. If you answered one of the others, just make some notes to yourself to say, okay, this is why it would be one versus the other, so that you can further reinforce that concept for yourself. Which of the following types of leadership would be most helpful in an organization experiencing an uncertain future? Would this be a servant leadership style needed, laissez-faire, visionary, or transactional? All right, so about 3/4 said visionary, and a little bit from there transactional, and then kind of an even split between servant and laissez-faire. Excellent. So why visionary? Future. And this is the key thing. So remember, for each of these styles, write for yourself like a 2 or 3 words that really kind of summarize what's the key aspect here. Visionary leadership is all about planning for a long future and an uncertain future. So not that this is yeah, I don't want to get into that habit where you say anytime you see the word future it means visionary, but if you're seeing an example of a question that says a leader or a group or something is trying to plan for far in the future or uncertainty in the future, visionary, think visionary. Excellent. Good, excellent. So question 3, a crucial step for establishing positive team interdependence: determining deadlines, attending group meetings, establishing those group member roles, or managing different communication patterns. So, in a question like this, as you're thinking about which would be the best answer, clearly these are all good. We always want to determine deadlines and attend meetings and do all these things. So, they're all good things to do. But key thing here, the question's asking, so a step for interdependence, positive team interdependence. Which of these was that concept most helpful for creating a good sense of interdependence among team members? Very good. So very again strongly for establishing group member roles, a couple people for managing communication patterns. Again, bulk of people are really along the good lines here. And again, if you're choosing any of these other ones, again, that's what these review sessions are for. Make notes to yourself. But exactly, establishing everybody's roles. Here's my role, your role. this is one of the most important things we can do to help everybody interdepend, because now I know what the other 10 people or the other 20 people, whoever that I'm working with, now I know how to work best together. I know who to go to when I have a certain need or a concern, because I know everybody's role. So key thing here. When developing a strategic plan, which of the following analyses can identify how an organization relates to its external environment? And again, a good example here, these are all managerial terms, right? So none of these are, nonsense words, but key thing here, how do I relate to my external environment? Is this a return on investment, a request for a proposal? Is this to be responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed? Or is this strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? All right, again, we're seeing about 3/4 of answers kind of going towards SWOT here. A couple people for RACI. Again, all important terms. SWOT analysis is all about how we relate to our internal and external environment. So those internal aspects, strengths and weaknesses, external environments, opportunities and threats. Which of the following best exemplifies a vision statement in a health department strategic plan? The department will provide quality, comprehensive, culturally proficient health services. The department will initiate a smoking education program in all primary schools. The department is committed to protecting the health of the residents of the community. The department will provide extraordinary service to the community it serves, resulting in the healthiest community in the region. All beautiful statements, to be sure. Which of these would most fit under that idea of the vision statement within their strategic plan?
We have one comment that says this one's tricky.
It is, and it doesn't mean to be. So
All right,
yes, let's see where we
vote.
are before I start chatting. Very good. Again, so we got about little over half saying letter D, kind of an almost even split between A and C, and a couple people for B. So this is a little tricky. And again, it's not meant to be tricky as a gotcha kind of question. These are all, again, wonderful statements. So the reason why D would be the most correct for a vision statement is because it's the most aspirational. So we will provide quality, comprehensive, culturally proficient health services. We can actually do that. Initiate smoking programs. That is doable. Protecting the health of residents, the community. Again, that's a mission statement, right? This is what we're going to do. The reason why D would be the most vision is because the healthiest community in the region. That's quite a, again, vision, tall order here. That's quite a lofty goal to set for ourselves. So in my strategic plan, this D might be our vision, and then we would say, okay, so how are we going to work towards this? We're probably not going to become extraordinarily perfectly healthy, but how can we move in that direction? And that's why vision statements of all the aspects, I think, of a strategic plan are the most frustrating, because they are the one that you can't pin down and say measurable, smart goal, achievable. It's meant to be broad. It's meant to be inspirational. It's meant to make everybody in a perfect world look at it and say, we're going to do it. We're going to get towards there. So when you see vision statement, think reaching for the stars kind of thing. That will let you know which one is most likely to be the correct answer. So a nonprofit store is opening a small community in a small community neighborhood with a vulnerable population. A banner is hung under the business that says, "A community where no child will ever be hungry again." Is this a goal, vision, mission, or objective? And hopefully the example from the one previous and my couple words shared there will help with this one a little bit. All right, so we seem kind of almost even, most abundantly split between vision and mission. A couple people for goal or objective there. I think it makes sense for most people to kind of be between B and C. Again, I didn't do two vision ones back to back to be tricky, but it's again aspirational. Is it realistic that we're going to have a community where no child will ever be hungry ever again? Again, that is in the ideal world. That's what we're working towards. Probably not the most achievable goal at this very moment. So this again would be vision. So just keep thinking the more people are kind of reaching towards perfection, vision. Everything else under that, how can we work step by step towards that vision? That's where our mission and our goals and objectives start to come in. So for the governance of an organization, which of the following should be measurable? So now we got to actually measure this stuff and know whether we're doing it or not. So would that be our vision and our values, our mission and our vision, our goals and objectives, or our mission and our goals? Which of these should be measurable? SMART goal measurable. Excellent. Very good. So I would say of these, C and D, because both of them have the goals in there, but it's goals and objectives. Very, very good. So these are the ones that, again, are the most directly measurable. Even our mission should be relatively measurable, but even that, it's still a bit abstract. It's the goals and our objectives. That is how we know whether we are approaching our mission and our vision, is to say these are the goals and objectives: to reduce it by 20%, to improve it by 50% by this date and this time. Those are always the ones that we go to when we're thinking of measurability. So very good. So to improve a research center's public image, the director commits to securing additional funding for faculty whose research has significant, measurable community impact. This would be a leadership style that could best be described as transactional, laissez-faire, visionary, or authoritative. So think of these as our four examples. Read the question again. That's always, I think, a helpful test taking habit, is to, well, these are the four answers. Go back to the question and say, okay, which of these would this connect to? So we have a director, they want to improve their image, and they're saying to the faculty, we'll get you more funding if your research has these measurable community impact outcomes. So which of these styles of leadership would that be? Most for transactional, couple people for visionary, authoritative, a few for laissez-faire. Transactional. And again, the reason for this, task reward. If you do this, here's what I'll give you in return. Authoritative would be more, you have to do your research that has, like, you're only going to get funding if you do research that looks this way. You have no choice in the matter. That would be more authoritative. Here they're saying, if you do this task, here will be your reward. Succession planning involves a defined plan to cultivate a new group of leaders, outline new ideas for studies, amend the mission operations of an organization, or update current programs and services to incorporate policy and regulatory changes. Which of these would be the best definition of succession planning? All right, so most are saying cultivating a new group of leaders. We have a kind of the next one from there, updating current programs, services, etc. So succession planning, passing the torch. Typically, the idea is we don't want to create that leadership vacuum. We have a charismatic leader. We have this great group. They leave. Now what? And everybody kind of loses that motivation. So succession planning is we want to keep that power going, keep that organization successful. We need to train and cultivate and help support the next group who's going to keep that motivation and that inspiration going. Excellent. Couple more. So in the design and implementation of public health data systems, that would be that informatics aspect. Installing security features should be inherent in privacy by design at all stages, a task done separately by an expert cybersecurity team, limited to firewalls and administrative control, the final steps before release of software systems. Think of this again from a leadership perspective. Again, all of these are good. These are all important aspects of cybersecurity. But in the implementation of it, from that leadership mindset, which of these would be the most correct? Which would be most connected to this idea of a leader mindset? I get about a little over 3/4 saying A, couple people for B. Exactly. The idea here, because with cybersecurity, with data and health informatics, the idea is that people are distrustful. People feel very worried. I would handing over all my protected health information. So that leadership mindset doesn't say, well, that's for the cybersecurity team to deal with. All of us, everyone, every step of the process needs to have this idea of how do we make sure the community is kept secure and their data is kept secure. After identifying and appointing expert members to an interprofessional team for implementing health initiatives, the administration shifts all responsibility to the team. Their role should mainly consist of receiving some periodic progress reports, should plan to confirm the team norms and dynamics are productive, can announce that the initiative is successfully launched. What would be the best role of an administration of administrators here if they're working with an interprofessional experts team? Okay, so almost evenly split between B and C, a little more on the C side. Exactly. So this is that fine balance of being a micromanager and being absent. This is when that laissez-faire style of leadership is done well. If you have a productive, highly experienced, I should say, team, they don't need me to micromanage every detail, and nor do they need me to disappear. It's that fine balance of regular communication, how are things going, checking in, but allowing them to do their work. When considering culture in research and practice, which of the following reflects those best practices? Would this be treating members of all cultural groups in the same way? Engaging culturally diverse advocacy leaders in the community? Recognize that cultural uniformity is necessary for effective health intervention delivery, or helping members of that community more easily fit into the mainstream culture to create a sense of belonging. Again, about 3/4 for B, a little bit of a split there down to C and kind of evenly from there. So for this one, B, engaging culturally diverse leaders, all step of the process. Stakeholders are involved, all step of the process. So it's the idea here is that if we want people to be engaged and if we want to consider things like cultural diversity, the idea isn't again to fit people into a box or to try to fit change into the box. It is to celebrate change and say we are going to engage with all steps along the way, leaders and people within this stakeholder community, and have them be part of the process. All right, so three more. A community health organization is collecting data and talking with community members about concerning trends related to the use of vaping devices in the K through 12 school system. So would this be an example of engaging in implementing a health initiative, engaging in organizational change management, engaging in assessment, or engaging in continuous quality improvement? So they're collecting data, talking with community members about this concern. What are they engaging in at this time? All right, so heavily on assessment, some on CQI. Exactly, assessment. Um, Not that this can't be a part of continuous quality improvement, but in this example, all we know is that we have an organization that's just collecting data and talking with people. They're not even talking about doing a trend. I'm sorry, they're not even talking about doing an initiative. They're not talking about creating a program. They're just gathering data and talking to people. So they're keeping an eye on the trends, they're engaging, they're looking at risks and concerns. At this point, we're just seeing the pure definition of assessment here. A health agency wants to implement a new initiative to improve the availability of fruits and vegetables at local corner stores by creating an incentive between store owners and agricultural leaders. This would be an example of evidence-based development, a cross-sector partnership, performance management, political willpower resources. heavily on cross-sector partnerships. Couple people for the other one. Excellent. So why is it cross-sector partnership? Because this is a collaborative effort between the private and the public spheres. Excellent, excellent. And then last one, you're doing all great. A public health researcher wants to implement a program to help with tobacco usage reduction in urban areas. They are currently in the process of training community leaders on how to implement the educational component of the program to ensure fidelity of implementation. This would fall under which aspect of CQI? Is this planning, doing, studying, or checking, or acting? Okay, so we have kind of a heavy on the on B, kind of next from planning, and a couple people for the other components. So for this one, it would be A. They're just planning. They're training people. They're not doing. And I think this is where the difference between plan and do can come in, because you might say, no, they are doing something. They're training leaders. They're training people on this component. That's all part of the planning stage. So the key distinguishing difference when you transition in this CQI model from planning to doing, planning is all the process, all the work you do before you are actively in the community. If they were doing the educational training in the community about tobacco usage, et cetera, then we would be in that do stage. But the key thing here is training. How to. It's all still preliminary. That's what would make it plan versus do. So again, if you're like, oh, come on, those are the little asterisks, those are the little things to write to yourself just to make those nuanced separations between the two, so that you can more easily identify which aspect we're looking at here. So very well done. Again, I know it's a lot of information and it's a lot of time, but excellent work. For the questions that you answered answered correctly, make a note that that's a concept that you're understanding well. And for any answer that you provided that was different than the one selected, again, write that down. This is all part of the preparation. This is all part of the study phase, just to help you get even more fine-tuned in understanding the difference in some of these terms, because it's a lot of terminology and it can get confusing. So I am going to open up the Q&A here just to see some of the questions that have been shared. So the first one, should a leader be a good listener or a good speaker? And I think that's a fantastic question. And I think what that really gets down into is the notion, again, of situational leadership, transformational leadership, with the notion that it kind of depends on the moment. So let's say if we're in a situation where people are feeling a bit demoralized, people are feeling confused, people are feeling maybe worried, that's where a leader who can speak, who can address, who can orate, they're going to be there to create a sense of safety, to create a sense of unity. We're all in this together. Versus if the leader, the situation at hand is more of, we need to figure out what this problem is, and we don't know why there's a problem. That's where my ability to be actively listening is going to be key. So I think that's a fabulous question, Shaw. And I think what it, again, gets down to is situational. The notion that what does this situation call for? And I think the thing that distinguishes it is, again, are we in a moment of learning, in which case being a good listener is going to be more the key, or are we in the stage where we need to solve, for lack of a better word, a problem, and that's where being able to speak, to direct, is going to be best. Are goals and objectives synonymous, or is one broader than the other? Excellent question, Ryan. And that's why you will see them together. They really are, for the most part, synonymous. I mean, technically, goals are, probably somebody else might even answer this differently, but I always see goals as slightly more broad, and the objectives are a bit more fine-tuned within that umbrella. But especially with what you would most likely see on the exam, goals and objectives you can think of as one and the same. I can almost fully guarantee you would never see a question that needed you to parse out the difference between a goal or an objective. So you can kind of think of them as a singular entity within a strategic plan. Could I list the 4 core competencies? Oh, absolutely. Yes. So again, I kind of mentioned that off the cuff. So the 4 core competencies for interprofessional collaborative practice are teams and teamwork. So the idea here is that to have competence in collaboration, you need to be able to work as part of a team. Roles and responsibilities, which goes back to that team interdependence. Everybody needs to know the roles and the responsibilities of everybody on the team. Interprofessional communication. We all have to be able to communicate, not just amongst people of similar professions and backgrounds, but diverse ones as well. And then lastly, values and ethics. We need to understand the values and the ethical needs and concerns of all people involved, all stakeholders in a given situation. Another question from Shah, how to deal with resistant attitudes in an organization to get a task done? Oh my goodness, what a good question. One of the key things that, again, this kind of comes back to conflict management. It's to very often in challenges or conflicts, we have needs that are opposing each other. We have needs that appear to be blocking each other. So often the first step is, just for simplicity's sake, if it's, let's say it's between you and me, to take that time to find out, well, what are my needs and what are your needs? Because maybe I'm misunderstanding or misinterpreting your needs, vice versa. Maybe our needs actually aren't as different as we thought they were. So I think a good way to deal with that, at least initially, is to find out what is the need that everybody feels is being blocked or being impeded, that has led to this conflict or led to this issue. And that at least allows us to all know where, again, everybody is coming from. And that can really help facilitate better discussion and communication, because without knowing that, there can be a lot of, what am I trying to say? There can be a lot of assumptions or a lot of misinterpretations happening. In the last question, question 15, what is the difference between doing and acting? So doing is going to be the initial program, the initial intervention, the initial outreach effort. So just as a way to try to give it some example, let's say we want to get kids to eat more fruits and vegetables, just for something really simple. Planning, how are we going to do this? Doing would be then we're going out, let's say, to the schools and we're doing our little puppet show or whatever it is we're doing to try to get them interested in eat more fruits and veggies. Studying, how did we do? And then acting is based on the results of the study or the check, based on the results of our assessment. How do we change our intervention going forward? So the idea is that if the results of our analysis showed, oh my God, kids are eating fruits and vegetables through the roof, the act part is, let's keep doing this program. The program is successful. If, however, the assessment results show they weren't really buying it, maybe puppets aren't the way to go anymore, then the act is, we're going to completely change our intervention. We're going to change our educational program, do it all again, and see how that goes. So do is doing the plan we've created. Act is making a decision about how to either change or not change this program going forward based on the assessment of the data that we've done. Oh, let me go back to question 11, because there's a question here. What's the explanation for C instead of B for question 11? Both seem to be bouncing. Let me just move this out of my way. I can't see which one I'm on. Here we go. So good question. And again, most likely, I would imagine most people looking at question 11 would be between B and C. So the key difference, or the reason why C might be a bit more correct than B, because you're absolutely right. Both are sort of a step back from micromanaging. In B, here the administrator is just receiving progress reports. And so it's a little even more checked out of saying, well, it's up to the team to let me know how things are going. With C, the idea here is they are planning on confirming that norms and dynamics are processed. So it's not that I, as the administrator, step back and say, I'm just going to assume everything's fine and hope that they email me or let me know how things are going. The idea here is that I'm still engaging with the team or whoever the team leader is, but it's not to tell them what to do. It's just to say, let's check in once a week or every 2 weeks or whatever the plan is to make sure things are flowing well. So the key distinguishing difference here is that with B, it's a little too hands-off. The idea with laissez-faire kind of leadership when it's done well isn't, I'm on vacation, I hope everything's going well. I'm still engaging with the team, but it's just more to make sure things are going well. How's productivity going? As opposed to, well, it's up to the team to let me know how things are. So that would sort of be the kind of nuanced difference. And you probably wouldn't even see a question quite so tightly similar between two options here. So if you're between B and C, you are on the right track with this kind of question. And then I had one more. Question 15. Aren't the community leaders within the community? You say planning is before entering the community. Oh, good clarifier here. That's a good question. So let me go to 15 again. So again, in this particular question, I'm saying, this is all being done before the community leaders go out into the community. And the question being asked is, well, aren't community leaders part of the community? Absolutely. But in this situation, the community leaders are going to be part of the research team, or they're going to be part of the education team. So we have recruited them from the community, but now they're being trained on whatever tobacco cessation program that we are training them on before they go back into the community as members of this team to try to aid with tobacco usage reduction. So that would be the reason why, even though, yes, they're leaders within the community, in this kind of example, their role here is part of our team. And so we're recruited them from within the community, I should say. But their role now is they're going to be trained by our program or our community health center, whatever it is, go back out in the community with the effort of trying to help with tobacco usage reduction. So it's not that, how do I want to say? So it's not that the community here in this case is like hermetically sealed away from the team. Again, in a lot of best practice, high impact practice research, we want them involved. But in this kind of scenario, their role is to actually be part of the implementation, like to be one of the, for lack of a better word, employees, right, of this organization to go out and do this kind of work. And again, that's why we want them to be community members, but now they're going to be going out into communities, parts of the community that didn't go through this training and haven't gone through our education process, because now we want to see how these other members of the community that haven't been trained in this react to this education program or intervention program, whatever it is that we may be doing. I have to say, these are excellent, really critically thoughtful questions. I have to say that some of the best questions I think that have ever been asked, is at least for the leadership review. So bravo to everybody who asked these really good questions. It shows that you're really thinking, again, like purposefully about this. And I have to say that's a really exciting thing to see. So again, you will do great. Everybody did great today, not only in terms of answering the practice questions, but again, asking very insightful questions at the end there as well. I hope that this has been helpful. I hope that the information shared here today is able to be supportive to you in your own CPH exam practicing and preparation. Keep taking those practice exams and questions. Study the points that you know are the ones you want to brush up on a bit more. And I know that you will be successful. So again, I hope this has been helpful to you all. And thank you so much for all your time and attention today, and enjoy the rest of the day ahead.
Thank you so much. We
Always
have
a
a comment
pleasure.
in our chat that says we had a very charismatic leader today.
Oh, it's so kind. Thank you. That really made my day. Thank you. That really...
Yeah. So thank you
Thank you
so
so
much,
much.
everyone who's been here for the session, and especially thank you to Dr. Disson for the presentation today. I hope you will all join us on Thursday for the policy and advocacy session. And I look forward to seeing you all then. Thank you.
Bye.